Welcome everyone to the Go to Market 10X podcast. Today we have Kyle Norton on, which I'm so excited for. Kyle is the genius of startup sales scaling and also was just telling me about his personal CRM, which sounds like he really has everything together. So we can dive into that as well. But before we dive into the questions for Kyle, I'll give a quick introduction to him and then would love to hear from you. And then anything I miss on my background, and then we can go into all the fun topics of scaling sales, optimizing inbound, your point of view in AI and sales, and more. So thank you, Kyle, for being here. Quick background on Kyle. He's the CRO owner, where he leads a go-to-market team who help independent restaurants grow their direct online takeout and delivery channels. He has 14 plus years of B2B SaaS sales experience. He's an LP, an advisor, and investor to a bunch of different SaaS funds and startups. Uh, and he's super passionate about the SaaS ecosystem and empowering entrepreneurs and innovators. So very excited to have you here, Kyle.
Yeah, thanks for the invite. This should be fun.
Yeah, what did I miss on your intro? Give us your quick background.
You got it, I think. I've been in sales my whole life, leadership almost that entire career, 10 years in tech, and being an owner like almost 3 years now. So I've started here when we were 2.5 million. We're well into the 30s now. So it's been a fun ride, and now I just need to do it, double it again and again and again, and then one more time, and then we can exit.
There you go. No big deal.
We're almost there.
Almost there. That's actually the first place I want to start. So you joined 2.5 ARR, scaled to 21 million in 22 months. Now it sounds like you're in the 30s. What are some critical decisions that you made in those early days that helped you scale so quickly? And maybe what advice would you give yourself if you were looking back on yourself then?
So I'm going to try to avoid most of the stuff I talk a lot about, like invest early in RevOps and enablement and all the data stuff. Like you can go watch my SaaSer talks, and um, I'll try to give a new view here. And so I think one of the themes that I'm really seeing in the companies I advise and people in some of the portfolios I'm involved in, GTM Fund and Stage 2, I think one of the really critical questions to ask that we had clarity on really early at Owner is like, what game are you playing? Are you playing a venture backed, we want to raise multiple rounds and try to go big and win in a big market? Are you playing that game? Because the sets of decisions that I made early on in Owner's history were very much optimized for that. And some of my advice is not relevant if you're playing a very different game. People are calling it like boot scaling now. So you're going to try to bootstrap to 5-10 million bucks, raise one really big round, take liquidity, and then that's going to be like your only round, but you held on to so much equity that it's like a great outcome for the founder. Or are you going to go one and done? Are you going to try to raise one early round of financing at like a seed and then try to get to profitability, never raise again? Okay, that's interesting in a smaller market where the growth oriented game doesn't make as much sense just because there's not as much room to run. I think this is one of the most confused conversations that I see online, and I have with founders, is they like really struggle with all of this advice. Oh, when should I hire my first VP of sales? You know, when should I add new channels? Should I think of it as a second product now? And it really, a lot of those questions come back to this core understanding of what game are you trying to play? And so to make it more tangible, Owner, we play in a really big market that's extremely competitive, and there's a bunch of adjacencies. And so fundamentally, we are playing a more traditional venture-backed. I don't want to say growth at all costs, because that's certainly not what anybody's doing. I think that was only a point in time. Growth at all costs was only basically like a 3-year window where people really lost their minds. But playing a like winner takes all mindset to our market. And so that meant even when we were only 4 million ARR. I had brought in a revenue ops leader that I'd worked with previously on contracts, and scaled to get him then full time. I brought in enablement quite early. We made like this really big data and infrastructure investments that um, only made sense because I knew we were going to try to go from 5 to, I mean, we're like 60 people in sales today after like almost 3 years.
Fast.
Yeah, and that is with every month our unit economics getting better and better. LTV CAC is improving, the cost per deal, cost per lead is all coming down. So we're not playing like a silly game, but the sets of decisions I made very early in Owner was like, we are trying to win this market. It's a big market and it will likely consolidate around a couple really big players. And so we're going to play that game. And so I think that's like one of the best pieces of advice that I find myself repeating now to founders and sales leaders that's sort of as a level set.
It's very good first principle thinking that a lot of people skip. They skip that step and that level of thinking before running into kind of like, what is the play here? Uh, you sort of answered this, but not directly. Is there anything you would go back and do differently?
Um, there's lots of incremental things that we would certainly do differently. Like I would get even more aggressive. That's easy to say with hindsight because uh, at that time, 2023, like you didn't know in 2023 if like you were going to be able to raise money for years and years. Like the markets were completely frozen. Silicon Valley Bank was imploding. And so we played it slightly more conservative than now that with hindsight at my disposal, I would have gotten even more aggressive, built some of these teams and grown even faster, particularly investments in demand gen. We hired a demand gen leader almost 2 years ago now, and really scaled into inbound. I would have probably just gotten even more aggressive, and made decisions even faster than I made them. I think
It's
like,
interesting. Oh, go ahead.
uh, I think there's some things that I had conviction on that I let play out, that I should have I should have more like authoritatively just being like, I feel like I know what the decision here is. Like, let's just go.
How can you have done that? Like, that is something when I ask people what would they have done differently, there's those 2 things come up a lot, right? It's like, 1, I should have been more aggressive in hiring and hitting go, which you're either one way or the other. You're either regretting going too fast or regretting going too slow. I'm not sure I met anyone that's like, "We did it perfectly." Um, and then the second is making decisions faster. Or it's making decisions too quickly and causing whiplash for the team. So how do you balance this? Because I haven't met anyone that's done this perfectly yet.
Yeah, I mean, so much of it is hindsight bias. Like you say this about the decisions that went well, but the decisions that you like had to unwind, the opposite would be true. I think so. I interviewed Ashley Greck, who's the CRO at Zero and former head of Global Focus Square, and she gave me a really great framework that has like really stuck with me. I do some of these episodes, and there's just like one thing that now I find myself referencing on a weekly basis, and this is one of them. He talked about gut data gut, and so like we've been doing this. People like us, like we've now been doing this for a long time, and we have a lot of pattern recognition. And you don't want to blindly apply your playbook and what worked in the last thing, you're just going to do it again. But I think having this understanding that gut is going to sandwich data in a bunch of your decisions, I think gives us more clarity to be like, okay, like we're going to gather whatever data we can, because especially in the early days, it's pretty limited. Like I did not have much of what I really wanted to make some of these calls, but in hindsight, most of the decisions where we like delayed it a month, we wanted to see more play out. Those could have been things that we decided on faster and just went with. Um, And, you always have the opportunity to unwind. You don't wanna give your team whiplash, like, that is the danger, but I think, like, a little bit of whiplash is probably better than going too slow.
especially in startups. I think about it as, is this a reversible or irreversible decision? If it's an irreversible decision, slow down. If it's reversible, something that we say internally is shipperate, ship and iterate. Just like figure out what is the decision or the test I can make that's really small that I could at least start to get to learn from, and then keep iterating from there.
Yeah,
Um,
that's the Bezos, like, one-way, two-way door thing. We say the same thing a lot. I think the push is on two-way doors, go even faster. Go faster. It's go as fast as you can while being able to communicate it properly.
yep.
One of the things, so this is actually one of the other, things that I would probably do earlier is, like, bring more focus to how we're communicating across the team. Um, because we do these enablement surveys, like, every 6 months to get feedback from the reps, and the 2 or 3 surveys ago, the big feedback was, "Hey, like, we're changing all of this stuff, and we, like, can't keep up, and it's just, like, chaotic, and, can we communicate things better?" So we spent a bunch of time, we built this, like, traffic light model for change management, which again, is in my faster annual talk from last year, and, there's templates on my web on my Substack with all this. Um, but we built this model to deploy change more thoughtfully, having better documentation and consolidating where things are shared and not letting people put change until they've, like, the required um written the required steps from that traffic light model. I think that would have let us go faster. That's one of those counterintuitive things. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And to go a little bit slower and, like, be forced to do documentation would help us go faster because the change would land better. That's another one that certainly, like, I would go do that again.
Yeah, that's I really appreciate that perspective. It's very reflective. It's something that I see a lot of great leaders kind of go back and forth with, and how do you balance speed and being able to make quick decisions, but also the right decisions. Switching gears a little. Something that you noticed in the early days was that your inbound um was not as high as you wanted it to be, or maybe not even as high as quality. What did you do to fix that? Why was it important to fix? How did you do it?
So in my first few months, well, even before I had started, because so Owner is a GTM fund portfolio company as well. I was part of the team that got us into the deal, and then stayed in touch with Adam and was going to transition into doing some advisory, and then he talked me into joining full time. Um, Even though the timing couldn't have been worse. I always joke about this. Like, I just had my second kid, and it was atrocious timing. But when something is like that has that upside, you got to go. And so I had known going in that there was an early churn problem. And so, rather than coming in and just being like, I'm a sales guy, let's sell more deals. Uh, having now done this a few times, I was mature enough to be like, okay, before I start trying to scale a bunch of headcount and volume, let's just address the quality issue. In your first couple months, you usually have a little bit of leeway, before you're really under the gun. And so I spent a bunch of time just looking at deal quality, like, why were deals churning? What was causing that to happen? Were these, like, really high fit customers? Was it the expectations that the reps were setting? And it was all of it, basically. We were not very discriminating on who we were signing up. The expectations weren't good. The handoff was mediocre. And so I spent well, we've been working on this since I started. Like, every month we're working on these topics, but, like, very much so in the first 60 days, that's what I obsessed over. It's just, like, getting the basics in place, so that our customers were better set up for success. And so my first full month at Owner was worse than the previous month, and my second full month was worse than that month, which is not really what you want as a revenue leader. But, like, I had conviction that it was silly to just spend a bunch of money and scale on this rickety foundation. And, uh, the CEO, Adam had confidence in me to do it and knew that this is the direction this was important strategically. And so I just cleaned all of this stuff up in the early days. And then we said, okay, like now let's hit the gas. Let's send a little more on demand gen. Let's think about scaling the teams. And sure enough, then the first month that was an uptick was still only 80% of the close one number the month before I started. But now the estimated revenue from those customers was now more. So it's fewer deals, but more estimated revenue, because part of our revenue is transaction based. And we knew that those deals had a much higher LTV because they were starting to activate at a higher rate. And then we could start to press the gas a little bit on growth. And so that was like the first couple of months. And this is harder advice to give more generally, because I think it's our business is SMB. We sign month-to-month contracts, and so it's quite like a mom and pop challenge. So I don't want people to over rotate on this, but I will say the advice to the founders and sales leaders, especially in the early days, is think more about customer quality and deal quality and expectations than you do today, because ultimately everybody goes through this. I'm sure you guys have been the same way. At some point, you're like, oh man, if our churn was better, we'd be growing way faster. And then you rotate a bunch of resources to CS, and so you can better set yourself up for success if you think about that from the beginning rather than waiting for the discovery and like at 5 million ARR, be like, man, our churn's like sort of suck.
Beyond just thinking about it, what does that tactically mean? Is that tightening up your ICP? Is that investing in CS early? Is that tighter partnership with product? Like, what does that look like of thinking about it early?
So I think the two major blocks are get really clear on your actual ICP. And that's not accounting firms under 100 employees. Like that's not really an ICP. That's like thousands and thousands of customers. It's accounting firms under 100 employees who are in the US, who service product-oriented businesses who have X, Y, and Z challenges that are using QuickBooks today and not NetSuite. Like you really have to get way more dialed in on the ICP than you are today. And that's hard because booking meetings is hard. Like building pipeline is hard in the early days, but it will save you a lot of pain and heartache later. So get really narrow on your ICP. Don't chase the deals that are outside of it but seem interesting, because they probably won't close at a high enough rate. And even if they close at a high enough rate, they'll churn, there'll be a problem. They'll ask product to build a bunch of stuff that's not great. So be super clear on your ICP, and then be clear about your point of view. So this is the other thing that, so I spoke at an accelerator last week, and we had like 80 slides and we got through 30 of them because we just spent the whole time talking about positioning and this topic of getting really clear on who you're trying to service. So be honest with yourselves and honest with the customer around who you're a great fit for and who you're not, and bake that into your talk tracks, your positioning early. And so I call this point of view positioning. My like methodology is radically transparent selling. And so the way that I try to construct demo messaging, website content is all around this like point of view. So it is our belief, and customers that choose owner choose us because. And so for us, it's because we're an opinionated product. And so the point of view and our belief is restaurant owners would be better off giving up a bunch of choice and flexibility in order to opt in to into a proven system of success. And so when we share this with our restaurant owners or our restaurant owner prospects, we say, hey, look, if you have all of these like brand ideas and you got a custom font made from a designer and you want your website to have all these bells and whistles, like that's actually not us. there's better solutions. Or if you're a sit down and like fine dining restaurant and you want like your brand to speak through your website in like a really fancy way, like go use Bento Box. They're a great solution for that. They're way more expensive because you're gonna have to manage it all and like you need a professional to like do it for you. But if you're a mom and pop takeout delivery restaurant and you're okay to give up flexibility in order to opt into a proven system, because we have this consistency across our customer base, we can do A/B tests on samples of customers and then roll out exactly what's being successful across every single customer. So your performance is always better. Like you can't hire a digital marketing consultant and build something better than Owner has built. We have arguably the best restaurant marketers, the best digital marketing strategists in all of restaurant tech working for us, and an army of them. You can't beat them. Yeah, like unequivocally, every one of these other platforms, the customer moves to Owner, their SEO ticks up, their growth ticks up, conversion rates, like everything gets better because they're opting. And so I explain this as a tangible example, but like that's our point of view. And a customer can say, actually, like my wife's a digital marketer and we've got her firm working on it. And we want a platform where we can make all these choices because we think that one of the most important things about running a restaurant is your brand identity and blah, 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 blah. Cool. That's one view on how to run a restaurant. It is not our view. Best of luck to them. But we can part ways within 15 minutes on a first call and save ourselves all the time and energy. And so going back to your question on how do you prevent churn, just bake in what you're great at. Like what is your 10x feature? Who are you for? Like what is your core belief about what the market has gotten wrong? And then lead with that. And then the right fit customers will opt in, the wrong fit customers will opt out. And especially in the early days, this is important because your product's just going to be worse than basically everything else in the market when you're a seed stage startup. But there'll be one thing that's better, one 10x feature, which Jason Lemkin often talks about. And there's some novel insight, some reason you started this company that it's different than the norm. And so you just need to find people who also think that that's really important. I think if you can do those two things, everything gets better done.
It's so important. The ICP, figuring out what's 10x better, all incredible advice. Something that we think about is you set your ICP, you need to go outbound to that ICP. You're very clear on what is ICP, what's not ICP, what's the 10x value that makes this so much more impactful for this one type of company. Something that
more importantly, like the point of view.
And the point of view.
What do you believe about this market that has led you to need to build your own product because everybody else has missed it, which then leads to the 10x feature and the unique value. But if you can start with the point of view, your unique perspective, the unique perspective that your customers share about this market, because one of the other things here is now I'm not saying my product is better because of this. I'm saying our point of view is different because of this. And because people don't want to be told your product's better. Nobody believes that. There is no such thing as a best product in a market. There's only better fit products for a particular circumstance. And so this will lead to a much more high trust selling engagement if you can lead with this point of view as opposed to like, this is why our product is good.
Totally. And that's very helpful for running sales cycle, doing outbound. Something that we see is sometimes we have this problem ourselves where we were, trying to solve everyone's needs. And we saw that we would get pulled SMB, but then upmarket enterprise. And it's really hard to do both at the same time. So we said, we're going to be more mid-market enterprise. And what that meant was we'd still get a lot of inbound from SMB, but we would have to politely say, we can't serve you right now. And what we're concerned about is what is the brand reputation there, and what is the impact of saying no to non-ICP fit customers because it's not an ICP right now, but it could be in the future. So how do you manage that when you're getting this inbound and you're like, nope, can't serve you?
We explain why pretty honestly. And so for us, we're a premium price product in our category. So we'll say, hey, and we have this machine learning scoring algorithm that runs that will tell us like how big or small this customer is. And if they're small, we'll say, hey, we charge $500 a month. and we've done some analysis on your site and reviews and traffic. And we don't think we're going to be able to generate enough gross payments volume, enough revenue for you to really justify it. We think you're better off using like a more value-based solution. And we'll actually give them the name of that tool. It's like, hey, this is actually a better fit for you today. Because we honestly know this. We know that if this customer doesn't do enough GPV, then they will churn at an unsustainable rate because the value exchange is there. We charge them $500. They're only getting $1,500 in orders from us. They have a hard time with that math. And so we basically just say, like, save yourself the time and headaches because you probably won't get enough value fast enough. And then you'll want to do something else because it feels like you're spending too much money and you've just used a bunch of time and energy and money on something that didn't work. And customers, it's funny, like you tell them politely that you're not the right fit, and that makes them actually, they want to work with you even more. And so we're actually trying to figure out, like, okay, in these scenarios, what could we do? Because, but yeah, I think like that's what we try to do, but we don't have an awesome answer.
It's the hilarious, we see the same thing when we send that, hey, like the disqualified email, we'll get pings and pings and pings until they find a way to get in front of us.
This is an incredible lesson in sales. Like, why is that? And how do you emulate that in your sales process? And so what has happened here is, what happens in sales is when you're pushing and pushing and pushing, you trigger this thing called reactance. And reactance is basically people's need for self-determination and autonomy and free choice. And when they feel like that's being taken away because something is being pushed on them, they pull back. But when you resist that urge, when you resist the urge and you're more of an impartial buying Sherpa, we call it, like we tell our teams, like, act like a Sherpa. You're a guide. You're not their boss, but you're like a guide who's going through a journey that you know better than them, but you don't boss them around. When you act like this, then miraculously people want to engage with you much more. And so the cue for the salespeople and the leaders on the call is to think about how you present your solution in a way that is just like less arrogantly sure of yourself than you are today. This is where we're good. This is where you're bad. If you believe this is the way you want to do business, we're a great choice. If you want to do business like this, we're probably not a great choice. And you let the customer opt in. I heard a great saying that I keep butchering, but when you say it, it's sold. When they say it, it's gold. And so any opinion that you give that is like, we're the best because of this, this, and this, that's going to feel like selling. But if you can extract that out of people, or have a customer say it's going to seem a lot more credible.
Yeah, incredible. Well, Kyle, we're somehow already at time and we barely even got through our list of questions. I forgot we prepped questions. But because this was just an awesome discussion. You are incredible. So much tactical, good advice, real good experience scaling, learning lessons, iterating from them. So really appreciate you being here with us.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. And this was fun.
Thanks. And where can people find you if they want to learn more or connect with you?
Just hit me on LinkedIn. Most of my stuff is there. You'll find a link to the podcast, to the Substack, and all that. There's a bunch of this stuff. Go to the Substack and go to my older articles. There's a lot of very tactical templates and strategies and stuff there.
Thank you so much, Kyle.
Okay.